Hey guys, welcome to another mythology video. In this one, I want to talk about witches. Some really cool witches that I really like in mythology. The first two I want to mention go back to Greek mythology. The first one is Circe. Of course, Circe is a little bit more than a witch. She actually is related to the gods themselves, but she's usually not pictured as being a goddess living up in Olympus or an immortal. She lives on an island in the Mediterranean, and she's really famous in the Odyssey for luring men, seafaring men to her island and turning them into swine. When Odysseus lands on her island, Hermes, the messenger god, gives him a special plant to protect him from being turned into a pig. So when he confronts Circe, she can't do anything, and instead she becomes his lover. So and then later she gives Odysseus advice on how to get home to his land, Ithaca. Circe also is famous. She's famous for. She appears also in Apollonius of Rhodes, the Voyage of Argo, and there's also a more minor story involving her. It's said that she fell in love with this sea god by the name of Glaucus, but Glaucus had eyes for this nymph, this lovely nymph by the name of Skylla. And you don't want to go through competition with Circe when it comes to who she wants to love. So what she does is she makes this vile potion and she pours it into the area of water that Scylla comes to bathe in and hang out in, and Scylla turns into this monster, and she becomes that monster Scylla that we hear about in the Odyssey, that is on the land, and anybody that she's across from Charybdis, the whirlpool. So you got Charybdis, the whirlpool, and you got Scylla, the monster, and anybody who's got to sail through the Straits of Messina has to avoid these two. So she becomes that monster. Thanks to Circe. Moving away from Circe, there's the other witch that's talked about is Medea. Yeah, not Tyler Perry's Medea. This is another Medea. She is the daughter of the king of Colchis, which is this land on the other side of the Black Sea. And it's where the Golden Fleece is. So she actually is in several ancient Greek and Latin works. But one appearance, maybe it's the oldest appearance, is in the Voyage of Argo, where written by Apollonius of Rhodes. What happens is Jason is coming from Greece, trying to get the Golden Fleece, and the gods want to help Jason. So what they do is that they send down Eros, who shoots an arrow at her and forcibly makes Medea fall in love with Jason. And this would ensure that Jason would be successful, because the king of Colchis is not simply going to hand over the Golden Fleece to Jason. There's a bunch of trials. So Medea, to help him, she actually evokes, through a ceremony, she evokes the goddess Hecate. Hecate is like the goddess of witches, so that's the person to go to if you want to be a successful witch. So she evokes Hecate, and with Hecate's help, she helps Jason go through the various trials that the king makes him go through. But he still doesn't give him the fleece. So they try and steal it, but it's guarded by a dragon. But thanks to Medea, because Jason, he's not much of a hero. He's nothing with Medea. So Medea puts the dragon to sleep with her magic, and Jason is able to steal the fleece. Now they're leaving. Medea, because she helped Jason, has to leave with him because now she's an enemy of her people. Plus, she sees herself as the bride, as his bride. He's going to marry her when they get back to Greece. And she takes along her little brother. And according to one version of the story, while they're being chased by the king of Colchis, she unfortunately helps them get away by killing her little brother and cutting him up and throwing pieces overboard, so that this slows down the king of Colchis, because he's got to pick up the pieces of his son in order to give him a proper burial. So then they go by various islands. Now, one island, I think it's Crete, is guarded by this giant bronze man called Talos, and Talos has this habit of throwing boulders at any ship that comes by. And once again, Medea saves Jason by Talos had on his ankle, he had a vein exposed, and she made him cut his vein against a rock. And his blood came out, or as they call it, his ichor came out, and he collapsed. And then they make it back to Greece, and then Jason, to show how grateful he is, he decides to abandon Medea and says, "I don't want to marry you. I want to marry this princess of Corinth." So Medea, of course, says, "Well, you're not going to jilt me." So she, using her magic, she invests this beautiful garment with poisons and gives it as a wedding present. And the princess who's going to marry the princess who's going to marry Jason, she puts it on and she bursts into flames. And then Medea decides to, because apparently, even though she didn't marry Jason yet, she killed his. She killed her own. Oh, were they married in Colchis? Well, anyway, whatever. She winds up killing her own kids. This is amazingly told in the play by Euripides called Medea. And she murders her children. And you're like, why would she murder her own children? It's because she knows that being seen now as a murderess, her kids will always be seen as her kids will be stained by that. So she decides killing them would be a better fate. And then Jason comes along and confronts her. And, "How did you kill our kids?" And she runs away and gets into a chariot that's drawn by these winged dragons, and gets away. And she has further adventures, and then she finally lands in Asia with her son, and they found the kingdom of Medea. Okay, so that's enough for Medea. Now I want to go to Russia, and I want to talk about this other witch called Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is this really amazing witch. She lives deep in the forest in a little hut, and the hut stands on two little chicken legs, so it could actually turn around. She lives in sort of like this little universe of hers. Surrounding her house, there's these gates of bones, and at night, the light shines from the skulls from the skeleton fence that surrounds her house. She has her own night, day, and sun in the form of nights. So if you see this guy dressed in black on a black horse, you know that in Baba Yaga's world it's going to be night. If the guy is wearing white, it's going to be day, and a guy dressed in red means it's going to be the sun. So she's like in control of this own little world. And this is really wonderful story of this beautiful woman named Vaselisa. Vaselisa goes to Baba Yaga because this is sort of almost like a Cinderella kind of story. She's got like a mean family and they want to get rid of her. So they send her off to Baba Yaga in a suicide mission to get a light, because they didn't have fire or something. And Baba Yaga is very, very dangerous. Sometimes she's a help. She can help certain people in folktales, but many times she's very dangerous. It's said that she's cannibalistic and she's got a huge appetite. So anyway, just like in many folk stories, Baba Yaga gives these chores to Vaselisa to do, and saying she's going to punish her if she doesn't complete them. Just like in so many fairy stories, the hero is given these impossible chores to do in order for them to get what they want. But luckily, Vaselisa had a little magical doll that took care of all the chores that had to be done, and. So, and again, the witch, Baba Yaga, is very confused. Hey, little girl, I don't know how you do these chores I set you. But why did you come here anyway? And I came here to get a light, and I'm under the I'm under the protection of my mother. This is her natural mother, the good mother, the mother that gave her the doll, the magical doll. The people she's living with is just, I think, extended family or something that's mistreating her. So when the witch hears about Vaselisa being under the protection due to the love of her mother, this is like horror about Baba Yaga. Oh, get out of here. I don't want to hear about mothers loving their daughters and protecting them. Here's a light. And she grabs one of the skulls that have light coming out of their eyes and gives it to Vaselisa and says, here, take the skull and get lost. And it'll provide light. And so Vaselisa goes through the forest and it's night, and the only thing guiding her path is this branch with this skull with these glowing eyes lighting her way. And she goes to her evil stepmother and her evil sisters, and suddenly fire shoots out of the skulls and kills everybody. And Vaselisa is rid of her evil stepmom and sisters. And eventually, as the story goes, she eventually meets this incredible, no, not a prince. I think she winds up marrying the Tsar of Russia, supposedly. One of my favorite images in all of mythology is just this wonderful painting of Vaselisa. You could see in the background the hut and the skulls, and you could see her walking with the skull with the light coming out of its eyes, and trying to get back to her home. It's an amazing portrait. It's also an image that's found in this book. This book is really great. It's called Wizards and Witches by Time Life Books. It was part of a series called The Enchanted World, and it really was the very first book I ever read on all kinds of interesting wizards and witches, and a lot of what I'm telling you has to do from this book. And that picture I showed you is also in this book. Moving on, I want to talk about, another witch that is talked about in this book is a witch that you don't hear about as much. Her name is Louhi. Now, Louhi is a witch that you can be found in the Kalevala, which is the national epic of Finland. There's these great heroes who live in a place called Kalevala, and then in the far north is this dark, mysterious place called Pohjola, which is guarded by this witch named Louhi. And Louhi is a powerful witch. But on the side of the heroes, there's a powerful wizard by the name of Vainamoinen. And the two of them get along for a little while, but then they get into this big fight. And what happens is that there's this magical object in which they fight over, which provides wealth to whoever has it, and the two of them fight over it. And in the cover of my version of the Kalevala, you got the hero Vainamoinen fighting Louhi, who's in the form of a giant monstrous eagle, and she's got arrows on her back, and they have this big battle on the sea, and this magical object falls into the water, and neither of them get it. And then when this happens, Louhi gets so angry, she punishes the people of Kalevala by causing all kinds of terrible things to happen, including taking the sun and the moon from the sky and hiding it into a mountain. She's that powerful. But thanks to Vainamoinen, the sun and moon are restored and things go fine. So she's an interesting witch. I thought I'd mention her briefly because you've probably, if you dabble in mythology, I'm sure you've heard of Circe and Medea and Baba Yaga, but you probably haven't heard of Loki. Now, I don't want this video to get too long, but I just want to talk about one more witch. In Arthurian legend, you've probably all heard of Morgan Le Fay. She is the half sister to King Arthur, and she's one of the enemies of King Arthur and his knights. She's a constant thorn in his side. Through her magic, she is causing all kinds of trouble. Where did she learn her magic? Well, apparently it was in a convent, and you're wondering, what are these wacky nuns doing in convents, dabbling in magic? Actually, that's not very surprising, because when you read about old manuscripts of magic, where are you going to find them in the Middle Ages? You're going to find them in like places where people knew how to copy them and keep them going and know how to read them. They're going to be found in like monasteries and all kinds of places where you'll find nuns and clergy people and all kinds of stuff like that. And some of them have even like kind of like got into it and dabbled in some, evil magical practices that really they weren't really supposed to play around with. There's some interesting books on magic that talk about some of the things that, they looked at. But anyway, supposedly she learned magic in a convent, and she did several things to kind of make King Arthur and his knights miserable. For example, she's the one that sent the Green Knights to test how brave King Arthur's men were. The only one that jumped at the chance was Sir Gawain. He was the only one brave enough. There was one time she stole the sword Excalibur and gave it to a lover, and then this lover got into a fight with King Arthur, and King Arthur couldn't really protect himself that well because the magical sword Excalibur was being fought against him. Eventually, he gets his sword back thanks to the Lady of the Lake, and he goes after Morgan Le Fay, but she turns herself into a statue. So and Arthur sees her and he thinks, oh, this is a curse on her. She's a statue because of her evil doings. But that's not really true. Morgan Le Fay purposely turned herself into a statue because she couldn't get away in time. But then, let's see, what do I have here on, so she's like a constant troublemaker, but then she eventually reconciles with King Arthur, and she's the one at the end. And this is all, by the way, there's a lot of writings of King Arthur, but everything I'm telling you is pretty much in that one book, La Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Mallory. That's the one that has everything I'm telling you right now. And at the end, she's the one that actually warns King Arthur about the love affair between Guinevere and Lancelot. So she's the one that warns him of that. And not only that, but when King Arthur is mortally wounded at the very end of the book, who comes for him? His sister, Morgan Le Fay, along with other fairy-like women, and they take him to this magical island, Avalon, the island of apples. So she becomes kind of good at the end. And the interesting thing I'll mention one more thing about Morgan Le Fay is that it's interesting. The two big magical workers in Arthurian legend is Morgan Le Fay and Merlin. And just to contrast them, just as a point of interest, I had mentioned that Morgan Le Fay learned magic in a convent. And Merlin, apparently, I don't think he went to school for it. I don't know if I can't recall if I talked about Merlin in another video. I probably did, but he was born kind of magical to begin with because his mother was visited by some strange being, some magical being in the night. Sometimes it's referred to as an incubus, and visits her at night, impregnates her, and she gives birth to Merlin, and Merlin is kind of born magical. How this is interpreted varies on whatever source you read. For example, some sources say that it was a fairy-like being, so therefore Merlin has fairy blood running through his veins, therefore he's magical. Other interpretations is that, well, if it's an incubus is a demon, essentially. So Merlin was essentially going to be an evil being, but his mother, very quickly, as soon as he was born, she had him baptized, so whatever evil was in Merlin ran away, and Merlin became a worker, an enchanter of good. So anyway, okay. So that's it for these interesting witches. Until next time.